The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the last people to come out to Dajjal would be women. And a man would have to return to his home and tie down, meaning coercively restrain his wife, his sister, his daughter, to protect them from being seduced by Dajjal. We recognize that to be the modern feminist, Western feminist revolution, which is now seeking to establish its base in Muslim society as well. How would you recognize it? He said women would be dressed and would yet be naked. So when you see women dressed and yet naked, there's the evidence. These are the last people to come out to Dajjal. Some people would be annoyed with the Prophet ﷺ for speaking like this. Yes. He said that women would dress like men. So you see them with a jacket and a trousers, and if you go to McDonald's, you see them with a tie as well. And some people would be annoyed with the Prophet. Yes, annoyed with him for exposing this fraud. Why would women want to dress like men? Why? They don't know. So I have to tell them why. The answer is Dajjal wants to disrupt and overturn, turn upside down the functional role of men and women in society. Allah ordained one thing, and mankind recognized it all through history, that men had a functional role in society different from women. That men were supposed to work and to maintain women. And that men were supposed to guard and protect women. And as a consequence of which women were obliged to be obedient. Obedient to their husbands, obedient to their guardians. Dajjal contests that. Dajjal does not want to hear anything about women being obedient to their husbands. No, 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 that belongs to an old age that's gone. This is the new age. This is an age of enlightenment. This is an age where there is no discrimination. And so women don't have to be obedient to their husbands. Wake up to the modern world. Which one? The modern age of Dajjal. And in this modern age, a woman must have the freedom to pursue any activity she wants to pursue. Anything a man does, a woman should have the freedom to do it. And so women assume the functional role of men in society. And when they do that, it has calamitous consequences for marriage and for the family. Calamitous consequences. He said that men would dress like women. 1400 years ago he said that. And of course the first thing that a man has to do, but why would men want to dress like women? Is it to assume the functional role of women in society? Or is it to attract another man? Is it that he's prophesying that this age that glitters like gold is going to culminate with men marrying men and getting a marriage certificate? And that is the ultimate achievement of modern Western Dajjal civilization? And that women would marry women? That is your progress? The first thing that a man would have to do if he wants to dress like a woman is to shave off the beard. That's the first thing he has to do. Whether it's a big growth or whether it's a small growth, it's still a beard. Why did Allah place the beard on the face of the male? There are two answers. The first, of course, is that you'll be able to distinguish from a distance the male from the female. It's a divine wisdom. The divine wisdom. The second reason, of course, you know it, don't you? So children can play with the beard. Huh? And all of mankind kept the beard all through history until Dajjal struck with his civilization. Modern Western civilization took off the beard, and now every civilized male who wants to get promotion in his job, who wants to reach the top, every civilized male who wants to look clean must shave off his beard. Because if you keep a beard, you're dirty. That's the brainwashing that now passes for civilization in this godless age of ignorance. More than that, it's not just that you're clean when you shave off. It's the corollary that if you have a beard, you're a terrorist. And so there is an attack which has been launched on the male-female relationship, which is, of course, the foundation of marriage. Marriage is between a man and a woman. And in the marriage between a man and a woman, Allah explains at the beginning of Surah An-Nisa, the first ayah, وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَالنِّسَاءَ, that the purpose of marriage, purpose of marriage as explained by He who created you from a drop of sperm, and in whose hand is your life. In this verse, He says the purpose of marriage is children, procreation, so that mankind will survive. If you are to have children, how can a marriage of a man with a man produce children? How can a marriage of a woman with a woman produce children? And yet there's a tomorrow which is coming when every single government will have to bow. They'll have to bow before the UN and before the IMF and before the World Bank and before this and that and the other, and they will have to enact legislation in every single Muslim country to legalize the marriage of a man with a man. It's coming. You don't believe me? Well, just wait and see. They're bowed in everything else so far, so they're going to bow in this as well and prostrate. But marriage in Islam is between a man and a woman so children can be born. It's so simple. Why should we bow? Why should we bow to those who are seeking to get us to worship them rather than to Allah? Allah speaks of marriage as an institution that is meant for Jannah. For Jannah. Because the first marriage that took place was when Allah created from Adam alayhi salam, He created his spouse, Hawa alayhi salam. And then He said to both of them, Uskun anta wa zawjuka al-jannah. Go and dwell in paradise. And so the very essence of marriage is something that belongs to paradise, and hence something that is spiritual. And in Surah Ar-Rum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about marriage. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, and amongst His signs is this, أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. that He is created for you from amongst your very mates, your very selves. He has created your mates, your spouses. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, that you might dwell with them in a state of sukoon. Sukoon is peace and contentment and tranquility. There are things in life which money cannot buy, and sukoon is one of them. And so marriage is for paradise. And in paradise, this is what you get, sukoon. And if you marry here in Allah's name, and you live in accordance with Allah's law, then you get a piece of paradise right here on earth. In Surah Al-Baqarah, He says, it is now halal for you in the nights of fasting to go to your wives. Prior to this, it was not permissible because the previous Sharia was being used, the one in the Torah. And in that Sharia, fasting began at sunset and continued until the following sunset. No food, no drink, and you could not go to your wives. But now a new law comes down, and now it is halal in the nights of fasting, because the fast begins at dawn and it ends at sunset. So Allah says, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. It's now halal for you to go to your wives on the nights of fasting. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. You are inseparable, like you and your clothing. Do you ever forget your clothing at work, at home when you come to work? Huh? I don't think you ever do that. Forget your clothing at home when you come to work? No, you're inseparable. You and your clothing. So too you are inseparable, the male and the female. فَالْآنَ, and so now, بَاشِرُهُنَّ, now embrace them, your wives, in the nights of fasting. And when you embrace them, what do? وَابْتَغُوا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. And now seek for what Allah has written for you. So Allah does the writing. That's what He says. Allah determines how many children you have. Allah determines how many will be male and how many will be female. But along comes Dajjal with his new godless age, and he says, nope, that's irresponsible conduct to believe that Allah should do the right thing. Oh, no, no, no. In this modern age of Dajjal, we take over and we will do the right thing ourselves. We'll decide how many children we'll have. It's called Planned Parenthood. And we'll decide how to space them off. And we'll decide how many will be male and how many female. Normally, one male, one boy and one girl, the American Sunnah. Now if that is all that Allah gave you, and you want more children, but that's all that Allah gave you, that's not the American Sunnah. That's what Allah gave you. But if you have a pre-decision, I want a boy and a girl, and you sit down with your wife and you all plan and decide, okay, the boy first, and then 7 years later the girl, and then close the shop. You're committing shirk. You're committing shirk. And the amazing thing is you'll be committing shirk without even knowing it. Without even knowing it. But Dajjal's attack is more profound than that. What he does is to, the hadith is that Dajjal sees with one eye, the left eye. He's blind in the right eye. It looks like a bulging grape. But your Lord is not one-eyed. Between his eyes, on his forehead, is written the word? Kafir. And every mu'min will be able to read it, whether the mu'min is katib or ghayru katib, literate or illiterate, still be able to read it. Our understanding, and Allah knows best, is that the left eye symbolizes external sight, and that the blind right eye symbolizes internal blindness. And so from this emerges what we call an epistemology. The philosophy of knowledge, epistemology. That knowledge comes only from external observation, the scientific method. And knowledge does not come from internal insight. From the time you declare that knowledge comes only from external observation, then the path becomes predetermined for you. If the only thing that you can know is that which you can observe, and this is the only world that you can observe, it follows that this is the only world that you can know. And when you accept that this is the only world that you can know, one day you'll be led to conclude that this is the only world that exists. For all intents and purposes, practical reality, most of mankind now accept that this is the only world that exists. Welcome to Dajjal. So that woman there, that's all she is. She's a woman. She is flesh and she is blood and she is bones. She's a thing to be enjoyed. And there's nothing in her beyond her material being. When woman is approached with that conception of reality, it's only a matter of time before love will give way to lust. And that is the destruction of happiness in marriage. And that's where we are today. At no time in history have there been more divorces than there are today. That is progress. That's progress. Divorces are becoming so common now that tomorrow marriage is for the birds. Nobody's going to bother about marriage. You use her and you enjoy her until she becomes like the old withered branch of a date palm, and then you look for another schoolgirl. When there's love in the heart, she's never old. When there's love in your heart, she'll always be young in your eyes. When there's love in the heart, you'll never discard her. When there's love in the heart, you long, I want you not only in this world, I want you in the next world as well. But when there's lust, come bring me the next one. And make sure she's young. And then bring me another one. And make sure she's young. And so you have the substance of a sexual revolution. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said, the time will come when people will have sexual intercourse in public like donkeys. And that's where we're heading. Is that progress? Is there any government in the world which could prevent the movement in that direction? Show me one. I don't know anyone. What we are witnessing, therefore, because of Dajjal's attack, what we're witnessing before our very eyes is a program put in place for the eventual collapse of society. This is the modern age of Dajjal. And it's time for us to recognize that Dajjal now controls the modern age. It is time for us to recognize that we live in that age of the greatest test and trial that mankind will ever experience. And that unless and until we remain faithful to Allah and follow His Messenger, we will be worshipping Dajjal.